You're watching News at Prime. Well, let's get into another important conversation. There is renewed hope that the financially troubled post office can be revived. This after the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, gave the South African Post Office amendment bill the nod, which could expand its mandate and broaden the services. The parastatal has received just over 10 billion rand in government bailouts in recent years. The Communications and Digital Technology Minister, Malatsi, is my guest this evening, and he joins me in studio. Minister, good evening to you, and thank you for joining us in studio.
It's a pleasure.
Been wanting this for some time. So the new law, it expands the mandate and it repurposes the infrastructure of the post office. In short, give us an explanation of what the new look post office is going to be.
Well, the new law aims to move the post office towards e-commerce activities, right? Because the reality of the situation that the post office finds itself in is that it had been caught in a period where it wasn't able to catch up with trends and new developments that have taken place in the postal and courier services sector, which is part of the reason why it hasn't been able to be as competitive as it should have been, particularly with the mushrooming of all these retail aspects that have entered into the market for postal and courier services. It's work that was done largely through the 6th administration as part of efforts to say, how do you best capacitate this critical institution that serves a key mandate around universal access to postal and courier services, to give it a stronger chance of survival and also of accessibility. I mean, the post office, even though in the last few months, 18 months, there have been so close to over 200 branches that have been closed since it's been under business rescue. It's still one of those service delivery points that has the widest footprint in terms of accessibility to many poor South Africans, many of those being social grant beneficiaries.
Well, you speak about accessibility. That's actually the next point, because part of the process here includes services that respond to the needs of the users and customers. I want to ask you just a few of those. What will they be exactly?
Well, that is to go beyond just, sending of parcels and letters, because the market has moved beyond that, right? The intention with the bill was to get the post office to be an innovation and technology hub where you can be able to access transversal government departments and access those services that other government departments are offering as part of the digitization efforts that government has embarked on. But the key challenge beyond the bill is to then say, given the history of the post office, right, in going to government departments to approach them to say, we want to be the preferred choice of, provider for the services that you want to do. The post office has a lot of work to do there, because what has transpired in the last few years has dwindled trust in its capacity to deliver to the level of satisfaction. And a bill on its own doesn't solve all the problems and address all the deficiencies that are in place. It requires other things to happen, and part of those other things that need to happen is the mission that we are currently embarked on, to say that the post office as is cannot continue to wholly rely on the fiscus for survival, right? And we have set up a task team together with the Ministry of Finance, with some experts from the Development Bank of South Africa, to look at exploring private partnerships at an operational and strategic level that the post office can enter into partnerships with, to leverage our infrastructure, to attract new business, so that we reduce the dependency on government bailouts. I mean, the Minister of Finance gave tough love, rightfully so, because the fiscus is facing severe pressure, and government entities need to showcase self-sustainability.
You've already touched on the very element I wanted to come to, self-reliance, because the post office cannot continue getting bailouts. But a standout clause, at least I think, that spoke to me is one that says this bill or this new law, it empowers the entity to continuously adjust its business model in line with technology and industry development. If that's the case, Minister, should we expect it to ever go back to Treasury for bailout?
Ideally, if it works out as it should, no, right? And even the concept of bailout itself, it shouldn't exist in this, period that we're in, because bailouts should be reserved for extraordinary circumstances. And when you look at the quantum that has been spent on bailouts in state entities for the last 10 years, that figure is scary. And the consequence of that is you take from other core service delivery aspects. Mostly the three biggest victims of bailouts have been education, has been health, and I think even policing, right? So there's got to be much more scrutiny and much more tightness in linking the performance of these entities with the performances of the executives, the boards that are in charge for them, because that is the only way that you can tighten and improve performance and inculcate the value of excellence in delivery.
I'd like to move the conversation to a completely different subject now. The State Information Technology Agency. You look down as I mentioned this SITA.
Yeah.
You've referred them to the Public Service Commission for investigation.
Yeah.
What are the issues?
Only the issues there are plenty and systematic and have really adversely impacted on the capacity of SITA to provide the services it should be doing to government. There's just been a breakdown of relations between the board and the executive, infighting at that board level, high turnover of executives. The professional environment has dwindled. It's not the most conducive environment for professionals to work in. Yeah. There's been serious allegations leveled of, violations of normal procurement processes, concerns about, tender allocations, and all of those things collectively necessitated an intervention. Say this institution has been marred by a lot of controversies, right? And those controversies have trickled into the lack of trust that government departments and other state entities have in the capacity of SITA to deliver the ICT goods that government depends on. Yeah. And last year, a board was fired. That board then challenged its dismissal. An interim board was appointed during that period. The board that was fired at the time subsequently won a series of court cases, culminating in the Supreme Court of Appeal case that just a few weeks after I became minister, the ruling was that they must be reinstated. We then reinstated that board, filled some of the vacancies, drawing on some of the individuals who were previously in that board because we wanted continuity and hoped that this combination would be able to steer the organization in the right direction in the very short time that they have left in there. That unfortunately hasn't worked out as anticipated. It has led to heightened divisions, public spares that we've noticed happened in the portfolio committee. And it has left us with no choice but to approach the Public Service Commission, say the collapse of governance here, the breakdown of relations here requires an intervention that will wholly look at the deep root causes of the problems at SITA, so that when you have the new leadership that will come in the next few months, there is a proper diagnosis of what has been problematic in this institution. One of the things that have made SITA to be such a space it is the reality that SITA deals with lucrative business for the state. Yeah. And that attracts some funny elements in the process. And that cannot be divorced to some of the deep-rooted problems that have been taking place there.
By when do you expect a report?
So we are meeting with the Public Service Commissioner tomorrow to go through the terms of reference. We have made a proposal there in the terms of reference about timeframes, but we want to get their consent because they are going to do the investigation, because there may be other things that might need a longer or much more shorter time. Beyond tomorrow, we'll be able to indicate how long the investigation will take, but it's something that we want to be done ideally within a 90-day period, but will be guided by what the PSC says would be practical.
Malatsi, Minister of Communications and Digital Technology, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. This must have been the most delightful interview with you ever.
Thank you very much for your time. Please visit us again